I'm just gonna disappear.
Sophomores, we need your attention quicker, sooner rather than later.
Oh, I like later.
Yeah.
Let's go to bed. You can just sleep.
When don't we?
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
Like a copy of my presentation from last year. From my poster.
I wouldn't bet on it, but I might.
Or like from when you did yours.
Obviously, the thermostats don't work.
PowerPoint?
That PowerPoint slide.
You just want one that you can empty out?
Oh, are you gonna make
find
me resort to being fifth graders? I know you're not doing it. You're too cool for school, Taylor.
Well,
Is the building gone? Is it damaged? Is it no longer livable?
that thing will follow.
And then it's
I
an
don't think it's
insurance
in
fraud.
my little chart.
Yeah, sure would.
Whatever the heck you're doing, it'll report to you. You don't have
Get out, okay?
to have somebody follow you around. Except, it's probably not charged.
Cigarette butt into a pile of gasoline.
Because I usually don't use it.
Oh.
I usually just let it sit down.
Alright.
Yes.
You were supposed to.
No green light. No joy. Alright, so,
No, wait. Pictograph. What the frick is that?
That's what you've been working on with your.
it'll hang out right there and it'll report to you and if you want.
He likes it.
That's not supposed to be done.
Why is that?
What? Hey, you said, well, no, you said not to work on it.
No, that's not.
You understand?
Do you have several people gone today?
Mason.
That's one.
Mason and Hunter, yeah, that's it.
Okay,
Alright, our turn.
so, you have some med students from USC in the classroom.
Yeah.
They know way more stuff about the human body than you do. You should listen, possibly even take notes, because we're going to the cadaver lab later, right?
Later.
We talked about that last class?
Yes.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to know some anatomy before we get there. So,
Is that the people that wanted to go see the dead people?
yeah,
When is that again?
and it's not scheduled yet, don't worry about it. Right now, those of you that are interested in any kind of a medical career, and or any kind of science, and or not being a moron and being a smart person, might wanna listen to these guys.
Or English.
Or English. Well, that's-
Because I'm gonna guess they've read some textbooks in their
Yes.
life.
Oh, I'll bet you they
And
have.
I'm gonna guess they've written a few things too.
So,
We'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
My name is Dave Christensen. I'm I think the oldest medical student in beginning year 3 at USD, and this is Chandler Hunt.
And, yeah, my name's Chandler Hunt, and I'm on the complete opposite spectrum. I'm one of the younger ones in our class. Originally from Dakota Dunes, which is just north of Sioux City, so did travel a little bit further to get to our parts.
I'm from the east end of Long Island, New York. My wife is from Chester, South Dakota, and I was a woodworker for about 10 years in between, and just decided to go to med school. So, I guess, yeah, we're kind of coming at this from two different ways, and there's a program that we'd like to tell you about that Chandler took advantage of. The program that I took advantage of was one where you just make a lot of sawdust and get old and then decide to go back to school. And that's
Well-
definitely an avenue that's open to any of you if you're interested in that.
And he is also an engineer, you forgot to
Yeah.
mention. So
So I
you don't
did
have
take
to do,
Different course first.
there's different ways to get into medicine.
Engineers don't get these, that was really the main draw. So, do any of you actually have an interest in going into medicine of some sort? You do? Any idea what?
Doctor. Do you wanna do family practice, any specialty family practice?
They need a lot of family
Mhm.
practitioners for sure. What about you?
Same.
Same thing?
can you tell them why? In like 13 seconds?
I don't know, to take care of people, I guess.
And what does your dad do?
My dad is an administrator at the hospital here in Armour.
Mhm.
And Paige?
What's your mom do?
Everything?
Mom's an EMT.
Yeah.
And you? Why do you want to do this?
I want to do the prosthetics biomechanics because that's an interesting field.
The
Medicine and
engineering,
engineering
along with
together.
Engineering and medicine, yeah.
Very good.
You wanna tell them about the program?
Sure.
There's
So I was involved in for medical school is called the Alumni Student Scholar Program, I believe. It's ASSP is what everyone calls it. And if any of you are thinking of attending USD or thinking of doing medicine, I would definitely apply for it. What it is it's open to South Dakota seniors, and you do it with your application to USD. It's just one of those additional, click a couple buttons and it'll consider you. And they pick 4 students every year with a couple alternates, and you have conditional acceptance into medical school as a senior in high school. So I was one of the alternates originally, but I got my acceptance my sophomore year of college at USD when one of the students decided that she didn't want to go in the medical field anymore. So I actually got my acceptance 2 years before. I just had to meet certain requirements, such as doing the honors program. We had to take a special class at night and had to do my honors thesis and a couple different things like that. So if anyone has any specific questions about that, I can go into that a little bit more, but I enjoyed it a lot because it took a lot of the pressure off of applying to medical school, because they waive the MCAT. So not taking I did end up taking it just for my own sake, but not having to take an MCAT and not having to go through the application process takes a lot of pressure off of that part of applying to medical school. You'll still have plenty trying to get through your requirements, and I know a couple of the people that were in the program with me also applied to other medical schools just to keep their options open. So you're more than welcome to do that, but if you're interested in medicine, I would definitely look into applying for the ASSP program, because I have enjoyed it a lot, and I think I've learned a lot. And you have to do a preceptorship as your undergrad, so you spend 6 weeks with a family doctor somewhere, and it's a good exposure, and you get different mentors through that too.
You did this when did you apply?
Your senior year, when you're
Of high
doing your
school?
application, of high
Of
school.
college, high school.
Yep, when you're doing your college
Wow.
applications, it's one of the applications that you can apply for. And I know there's different requirements for the ACT, but I don't know if they've talked about changing that in the last 5 years. I'm not sure what the current requirements are. When I was in, you just had to be able to get in the honors, which was that you had to get a 28. So I don't know if they've adjusted any of those requirements at all, but
Were you like Doogie Howser when you were a senior in high school? I mean, were you abnormally, you're just
I
normal kid?
actually, out of my group of friends, had the lowest ACT score.
Okay.
And I did well in high school. I had good grades. I took the ACT 4 times because I was not happy with it. I got 26, 26, 29, 27.
Oh, jeez.
But a lot of my friends that were also pre-professional, like, most of them were for law school, they got into the 31s, 32s, but I still got into the program. I don't think my ACT score limited me at all, and I have my own opinions about the ACT score and its correlation with how you do, because I ended up doing very well in college too, whereas other people might have thought their ACT score would put them at an advantage. Honestly, it's a test for an admission in my opinion, and it doesn't, they test very different things. If you work hard in school, you can get whatever grades that you want, whereas the ACT is a test of generalizations. But
Very cool.
I have no idea what I got on my ACT. It was so long ago, I just don't remember. I don't really care either. But the thing that I'd come at it from a different perspective. So I've done a few different types of jobs. I've worked on both coasts. I grew up in New York, but then I worked in Massachusetts, and then I worked in California. And but doing engineering and control system type work, which is sort of entertaining, but there's something about being able to do something every day where you're helping people, and until you work for a while not doing that and really want that, it's hard to describe to you guys, because getting jobs is kind of going to be a new thing anyway. But at this point, I would just encourage you to realize that a field in medicine is not outside of your grasp. If you really have a heart to help people, there are great fields to go in besides MD. Like the PA program is a really neat program. It's shorter. Most people that are more level-headed than I at my age go into the PA program rather than the MD because it's a lot quicker. But there are really some neat things to do to get involved and to help people on a daily basis, which is rewarding in a way that making a lot of money is not. And I can say that from experience. Making a lot of money can at times feel pretty empty. So I guess that would be my big thing, just to kind of keep it open and don't be worried about too much. I mean, you need to get good grades, and you need to be a good performing student. You need to be curious, and you need to care about people. And if you have those things, a lot can iron out on the way to something such as the MB program or PA, or OT or PT. There are lots of great ways lots of programs to do that kind of stuff. You're late?
Yeah, I called in earlier.
Are you feeling okay?
Yeah,
What would you like to do?
probably be a mechanic.
Do you do that now?
Not really.
Interested in cars though?
Yeah.
Almost the same.
I was gonna say cars and human bodies, they're similar.
So when I was your age, I was really interested in cars. And I ended up restoring what you would call rare or ultra rare automobiles for about 6 years, 5 years. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And actually there's a lot of things about it that are pretty similar. There's a way to think about something that doesn't work that's pretty similar to the human body. You've got distributors and you've got an ignition system, and in a lot of ways there's a lot that crosses over.
One of the things that, one of the things that has to happen in our conversation later today is systems thinking, and that's what he's talking about right there. Is thinking about everything as a system. What part of the electricity is not working? Why doesn't my starter even click?
A lot of medicine is detective, where you're not gonna know what's going on, and you're just gonna ask questions, and then something's gonna click, and that's gonna lead to a new question, and like you said, you're gonna go through. It's not gonna be, oh, they have a cough, I'm just gonna look at your lungs, or what they pretty much taught us is, if someone comes in with chest pain, don't automatically assume heart. You could have lung problems there, you could have a skeletal problem there, you could have a GI problem there, heartburn. So, yeah, very much along the lines of, things are not always as they seem.
You're going to the USD cadaver lab?
SDSU.
Isn't that,
I wore my blue and gold today.
oh,
goodness.
that's where your heart is.
My wife and I both graduated from there, and we're both non-traditional students, so I feel your pain.
Actually, this has been the most fun I've had. That I would turn around and do it over. Most people that get through the first 2 years don't really seem to want to do it over,
I don't
but
know if do it over is the
it's
word.
been
I
fun.
haven't regretted it.
Yeah.
The first 2 years is a lot of book work. We actually just got done taking our first round of boards, and we got those scores back last week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would agree with David. It has been a lot of studying, but you're actually studying stuff that's very relevant, and then when you go, now we're going into clinic, and we can sit there and be like, we've seen this diagnosis, we know what it's presenting with, we know what labs to run. So the studying is not, it's time consuming, but it's rewarding at the same time, because you're having knowledge that's, light bulbs are going off in your head as you're reading, and you're able to connect things.
You may not know the content of this class. It's an English bio course, so they get credit for both in the same
Okay.
90-minute class period. And we also have math that also is part of this, so they really get all of those things.
Okay.
And everything they do in here is problem-based, so we throw them a problem in and they have to go out and solve it, which drives some of them insane at some days of the week. How much of the education that you guys go through is actually hands-on versus book work? First 2 years is pretty much all books.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
We saw our
Awesome.
first patient in the first month
Oh, that is
of med
great.
school.
Yeah, they started pretty quick.
Yeah.
You have requirements where you have to meet 3 hours of clinic every month minimum, but they're encouraged, you have 4 hours set aside a week to do clinic work. There's also different scholarship pathways, which I'm not personally involved in, but there's different research avenues through there.
Yep, so, the scholarship pathways, if any of you are interested in problem solving and sort of, you can pick a lot of different arenas. I'm interested in computational biochemistry. I don't know what you're interested in, but there are,
Higgs.
no, I can't say I like bacon. That's about the only thing I can say about pigs. But we do have a researcher there who's an immunologist who does work with pigs a lot, tracking viruses, influenza virus specifically. Because of their ability to cross over and infect humans. But yeah, the Scholarship Pathways program allows students to match to professors that are doing different types of research if it's something you're interested in. I'm interested in cellular level type research, and so while I came back to school with an interest in a pediatric brain tumor called a diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. And there is nobody at USD that's doing that type of research, but there are people doing research using a cell line that is similar, and so there's some crossover and ability to try to ask some basic questions while there and have them answered, and the school supports that type of work, which is kind of exciting. That's one thing I really like. There are a few things that I guess I would plug for USD right now in considering where to go. In terms of the number of students per class, it's one of the smallest numbers of students per class in any of the med schools in the country. There are 144 institutions in North America that offer an MD degree, and we're one of the smallest. And to many people that's considered a detriment. To me, I consider it an asset in that the ratios are such that the professors will know your name, if for better or for worse. You know, really, the way it works is you have a class of 50, either they know you because you do good work, or they know you because you're at the bottom of the class, and you're having difficulties that way. But it allows you access to ask very specific questions and to work on very specific things, and that's been great. And so I would just encourage you guys, if you have something specific that you'd like to answer, don't worry about it being the right thing. It's never going to be something that's going to come down and say, this is it, this is what you're supposed to do. But if it feels good and you believe you have the skill set to pursue it, pursue it. And there are neat programs like that which Chandler took advantage of that would allow you to do it without taking on a lot of debt, which is something maybe you're not thinking about yet, but you'll think about it eventually. You look like you are thinking about it.
Also, and just a general plug for USD, I'm sure it's also very similar to SDSU because we are smaller college campuses for state schools. I mentioned I'm not doing the scholarships pathway program, and the reason that I'm not doing it is because I did 3 different forms of research in my undergraduate time when I was at USD, and none of them just really clicked with me. I had to do literature research for my psychology thesis, for my honors thesis. I actually, my freshman year, spent the spring semester in a lab doing PCR work, and that just didn't click with me. So that's one thing that I liked about the small school is all I had to do was email my advisor, and I had 5 different lab options that I got to choose from for what I wanted to participate in. So that's one thing that I would encourage is if you think you might be interested in research, it's not the only thing that, you don't have to do research to get into medicine. And I'm not doing research in medical school. But I would definitely explore that and make sure that's not something that you don't want to do. And with the USD and SDSU, it's much easier to get into the labs and to have the access to get those experiences and understand what you do and don't like.
These guys actually have experience with PCR.
Good.
Shockingly enough.
Those are really, get as much experience with PCR and those assays with the gels, because it makes your bioentry course so much easier when you have to do the labs and you can just plug right in and go ahead. It's really nice. You don't have to wait for 3 hours while they instruct the whole class. But are there any specific questions that you have about medicine, our paths to medicine?
What specifically, are you in, your title, I should say?
So we are medical students. We're 3rd year medical students. This is actually our first clinic rotation.
So that means you have a BS in what?
Oh, I have a BS in biology and a BA in psychology.
Chemistry.
Okay, so I have to ask this because I know they're all Grey's Anatomy. So is the long and short coat things reality?
We are short coats.
So you really, until you
we
become...
have our MD, we are short coats.
This is fiction.
This is something I didn't know till right now.
We're short coats.
You have a coat instead of an apron. Progress.
I guess so. It's the same coat that they give you if you work in a delicatessen. Keep that in mind too.
It's, yeah,
But, no,
You
that's-
can buy your own for $17.95.
Well, and I'll ask it, because Mrs. Kellard she teaches it too out of Ohio here with the math part of it, but how much math do they really need to know?
more than you would think, just because you have to be able to calculate a bunch of, and there's more of not necessarily doing math, but understanding the math. And understanding ratios and a lot of that stuff. I actually, just yesterday, learned how to do pediatric dosing, because the computers were all down, and we couldn't plug it into the system, so we had to go grab the bottles of the medicine and figure out how much azithromycin we were gonna give, because we had a 30-pound baby, or 30-pound toddler that needed medicine in the ER. So it's actually, you're not gonna use a lot of calculus or anything like that.
Algebra,
But
simple
basic
math,
algebra,
basic math.
you're
That's
gonna
about the
use
extent of it.
pretty often.
Okay.
You have to take calculus, I believe, to
Yeah.
be considered for school. But that's it, it's the first calculus.
And
that's
it's
it.
more of just to show that you can do that integrative thinking and the analytical thought process, rather than the actual differentials, integrals, and other stuff you do in calculus.
It's an eliminator to make sure that you
Yeah.
can think in certain ways. And that certain way is not the way you were taught to think in fourth grade.
You should probably try to remember some of fourth grade too,
Just a little bit.
a little bit of both.
Mrs. Sarda.
Yes. So, I'm curious about the perceived leap from 12th grade to 13th grade. That's gonna be more proximal for these guys? Did you think that was the same as 11th to 12th? And you're
been a
gonna
while.
be
I've
unique.
been
I was
to
gonna
two
say.
different schools. I
Sure.
went to Worcester Polytechnic Institute, which at the time was a top 10 mechanical engineering school. And that was significantly more difficult than high school. And then I went to USD for undergrad also, and I found that to be like, not half the gap. And unfortunately, I mean, and I'm old, but my opinion is that we as students typically, it's more of become a consumer-based education where, you guys go in and tell teachers that it's too hard or they're doing it wrong, and they might actually change what they're doing because of it. And so I think it's gotten progressively easier to be an undergraduate, and ultimately, I think if you allow yourself to just float along at what would be the mid-level at USD, you will have a hard time when you get to medical school. It is not, it's more challenging than undergraduate. But undergraduate can feel pretty doable, is my,
That's where I would put my plug in for the honor system, because with the honors, or the honors program, I'm sorry. Because with that, you can't really just float on by, they have specific requirements. Like I had to do an honors thesis in order to graduate with honors, and that was a 2-year project. Where I had to apply for different research approvals through the IRB and that kind of stuff. And they also require you to take different English courses than the core curriculum. And yes, and they were difficult compared to, I felt that I was a very good writer in high school. And there was an English professor in my freshman honors English that did not agree with me on that.
Might have had them.
But I learned a lot, and that would be my biggest thing is, there was times where it would have been nice back then, because it was like, oh, well, my friends that are in the general curriculum have such an easy book to read or such an easy paper to write, whereas mine was more difficult. So I would be upset then, but then looking back, I can't imagine trying to, if I wouldn't have pushed myself to do those courses or to do that kind of stuff and make you think past that, trying to go into medical school, there's days where we study for 15 to 17 hours, and that's not that abnormal. We just spent 50 days studying for boards.
but there were long days.
So now you know why we laugh when you guys say we're making your brain hurt.
Oh,
The first
Studying
10
headaches.
weeks are sort of, it's an adjustment to make, for sure.
but that's where you just have to understand where if you're feeling comfortable, try your hardest to make yourself uncomfortable, because I think that's the most when you're learning. And that's what I've kind of been saying when I've been calling home, is I have never felt more uncomfortable than I have in the last week being in clinic, because they'll be like, oh, what's this? And I can't just spit it out. I have to stop, think about it, and then I'll have a partial answer, but I don't have my MD yet. So I don't know some of the answers, and I have to be comfortable saying, I don't know, and I'm gonna look it up. And I think that is am I saying the right stuff?
You are just killing it.
They didn't give us a bulleted list, I promise. But that would be my biggest thing is, if you're ever feeling comfortable, I would take a step back and try and find something that's gonna make you uncomfortable, which at the time is bad, but if you're comfortable, you're not gonna grow. And, I don't know, I felt uncomfortable for a week, and all the patients have been very nice to us and patient with us, and the doctors and the PAs have been absolutely amazing walking us through everything. So, no one's gonna hold your hand through it, but you have guidance the whole way.
Excellent.
I have a question. Is this a required class?
Yes.
Yes.
So everyone, so some people are here because they have to be, and
Yes.
other people would have chosen
Everybody's
to
here
be.
because they have to be.
Okay.
Yes. And we are the only option. We're a small enough school, there are no other options. It's us. And we've combined biology and English for
And math.
6 years.
Sure, sure.
And this year we added in math with a PhD candidate from Ohio State, who's never been in South Dakota, I don't believe. And certainly never been in our school.
Yes,
That's right.
yes, yes,
That's right.
and that's great.
So they're getting a little bit of everything, and our plan is to next year offer all 4 core subjects simultaneously in one class.
Good idea.
And do all 4 core subjects in 4 hours, or in 2 hours a day.
Well, and
5
that's
days a
how
week.
the med school curriculum, which David can talk a little bit more about since he's on the med ed committee, but the new curriculum is, for the med school, is a lot of that integrated learning where you're not gonna have a block of biochemistry for 3 weeks. You're gonna have biochem in the morning, histology in the afternoon, anatomy on Tuesday, clinic on Tuesday afternoon, so.
Trying to tie, in our program, which I think is maybe what they're working on here too. For me, if you were to just give me a bunch of math problems and it's not tied to an answer that I want to have, I could take it or leave it. But if you have multiple disciplines together and somehow you're able to ask a question that you really want to answer, which is gonna be different for everybody, that requires the multiple disciplines, that's sort of the course that they're trying to take us through. And that's partly why they're getting with patients so soon is, because a lot of people go into the field because they want to work with people, and so you don't wanna spend 2 years, without being able to be reminded of why you're doing it. And B, it helps you to find the answers, and prescribing a medicine or seeing somebody or meeting someone who's got a specific illness, is 20 or 30 times more powerful, at least for me, than reading about it. You meet one person that has a certain type of tumor, that has congestive heart failure, that has COPD, you remember easily 10 times the information, and maybe sometimes 30 times the information, just by having a face that goes with it in a story. And so, that's kind of how they're trying to do it there.
So by getting you guys in the field sooner, are they shortening the amount of time that a med student, PA student will need to attend school?
No.
No.
We actually are in class, we only did 18 months. Our 2 years got shortened to 18 months.
Okay.
So we took board 6 months earlier than most med schools
To have more clinical.
because they think, our clinical experience is more beneficial to us than being in the classroom, so they've adjusted that. But no, I think more of the clinic, they've addressed it in a way where you can intersperse it throughout rather than having chunks of clinic time. And I think one of the other things that I would say about USD is, not only were we allowed to go into clinic, I think I scrubbed into surgery within 4 months of school.
Awesome.
And, they didn't let me touch anything, I kept my hands
Oh.
right here, but,
Probably
even
something that
scrubbing
would
into
not-
surgery was very,
I did some
Yeah.
closing surgeries about that time too. They really get you right in there, and almost to
Hands-on.
the extent if you want to and you get with the right doctors to say, I wanna start doing this, you'll
they'll let
be
you,
doing
we
it.
had students intubating patients for
Yeah.
surgery and.
Oh, I need to go back to school.
Yeah, it's fun. I wouldn't discourage anyone from going into it if it sounds interesting. It's
It's a lot
really,
of work, but it's rewarding.
it answers a lot of questions if you're kinda curious about what the heck your kidneys actually do. The kidney doesn't sound very exciting to me, but it sounds a little more exciting now, and it's just neat to be able to know a little bit about everything.
Do you feel like you're going to a small campus? Like, my uncle is Dr. Canton here in Mitchell, he does all this stuff, and he said he feels it helped a lot for him later on, being able to go to the smaller campus so he can get more hands-on experience. He said it's helped, he thinks it helped him a lot.
I would 100% agree with that, and part of it is we don't have residents to compete for, especially in Yankton. In Sioux Falls, there are a couple, but there's not huge residency programs. So if there's a surgery going on, or if there's a delivery for a baby, then they're calling us directly, and we have to take call for certain things. And in bigger schools or bigger cities, you're fourth or fifth down the ladder, and maybe you'll see something, or maybe you'll be standing on a stool in the operating room, whereas we're more hands-on. So personally, I think that it is making a huge difference.
I think, I would agree with all of that. The only thing I would say on the negative side that to consider is that, and it's been suggested to me that I look to do a residency in a larger city and then come back. I think that the training for medical school will be excellent here, and thus far it has been, and because it's a low number of students that you get to know the doctors more closely, you get to be involved in the procedures more readily, and they're gonna know your weaknesses more readily, so that I believe overall you'll leave with a better foundation than a lot of places due to those interactions. The only thing would be when there are more complex cases that require diagnostics that are not available, say in Sioux Falls, there are certain advantages to getting some experience in another big city, but there are lots of them in the Midwest that offer that. And Sioux Falls is ever growing and ever gaining the ability to do more complex diagnoses and procedures. So.
Well, in your fourth year, you can do away rotations. So if
Yep.
once you finish your curriculum during your third year, if you want to go to one of those, like Mayo, for example, or down south, or go to a bigger institute, you can go spend upwards of a month to 2 months there doing rotations.
So what I heard you say is that even after 8 years of college, you don't know everything you need to know to perform well at your job?
Well, so this is, I believe that, it's my opinion that any job to do perfectly, you will never do it. So I think it's an interesting field to go into if you're interested in lifelong learning, because it will absolutely be required of you. But that's what makes it fun too. It won't ever become old hat. There's always gonna be something new.
Does it ever
Just
scare
hit
you?
another one.
Does it ever scare you to diagnose someone wrong?
Sure. So I used to build cabinets. I used to have nightmares that like a cabinet would delaminate, right? Like who cares? You know what I mean? And then now you think about the nightmares that you'll have down the road that you did the wrong test, or you interpreted something incorrectly. There was an allergic reaction that maybe you could have determined beforehand, maybe you couldn't. It's a thick skin will be required of you because you'll do things right and somebody will be mad at you also, and that's just the way that life goes. And that's
But-
any field.
You get more comfortable with yourself too as you go on. Like, you could have asked us 18 months ago, and we would have completely different responses too. Because you'd be amazed what you can learn in 18 months and what we could tell you about the human body and whatnot. But I think it's just, you're gonna make mistakes. Humans make mistakes. And it's one of those things where you have colleagues. Usually you're not completely by yourself. And especially even in rural settings, we have the new telemedicine where if you have a question on something and you just don't feel comfortable with it, you can ask for a provider to give a second opinion. And there are so many resources that you can't even keep up with everything. I know the big one that we use right now is Up to Date, and there's a bunch of reference textbooks. So it's not like we're just throwing you into the wind and they're like, okay, you're a doctor, use what's in your brain because we're out. There are a bunch of reference tools, and you're not by yourself. But yeah, there's gonna be times where things don't look like the textbook, and just do your best.
So I heard you say that in your 7th year of college, approaching your mid-20s, you're not the same person you were a year and a half ago?
Oh
18
no,
months?
oh no.
Is that because you put so many things into your brain that the world looks different?
I hear you repeating things for emphasis.
That was
A little bit.
leading the witness.
I know myself in learning how to do transdisciplinary problem-based learning and working on my master's, I'm not the same guy I was 2 years ago. I look at everything different because of my experiences and what I've learned.
Yep.
I look at death differently.
Yep.
So I came to this, you know, already feeling like I was somewhat mature. I'll be 40 about when I graduate. No, I'll be a little bit younger than that, I guess. But yeah, I look at death differently for sure, and the human body. I mean, when I look at people, I now see, you know, potential infection like ankle problem, knee problem, heart problem, congestive heart failure, COPD, nausea, STDs. I mean, you kind of see things as you're looking at people now so it sort of changes the way that you just view the world a little bit, but to the extent that you allow it to also, that's sort of my nature, and so yeah, it changed for sure.
I can tell you from the beginning of when I started medical school, I would get stressed out and there would be a test, and I'm one of those cry into stress, and then I have a good solid like 5-minute cry, pop in the notebook, get it out, and then I'm fine. And that's just one of my coping strategies. And I would have to do that towards the beginning of med school because it was just, I mean, it's overwhelming when they hand you a 500-page textbook and they're like, okay, you need to read this and then go over those 16,000 slides, and you've got a test on Monday with like 50 questions. Good luck! And if you don't pass, you're staying an extra week, which was very rare for any of our students to have to do that. But that got stressful after a while when it's just, because you can't go through everything, you can't know everything, and a lot of it isn't a question and you spit it out, it's here's a question, and then you have to mentally go through and be like, okay, this is the diagnosis that they have, this is the treatment they would have, this is the adverse effect, how would I treat that adverse effect? So it's like fourth or fifth level thinking, which can be
Fun.
Scary. It's scary at first.
But it can be both. You just, if you let it be both, it'll be both.
I slowly, as you are doing those studyings and as you see more things and more diseases and more diagnoses, and you just, as you learn more about medicine and just yourself, you look at things differently. So when I went to take boards a month ago, I didn't have a meltdown because I understood, I'm like, this is a test. Like, I am not a test, I am not a score. There's someone else out there that just got diagnosed with cancer today. And so I don't know, it changed my perspective on a lot of that stuff, and I think it helped me grow just in that regard. And I think that was probably my biggest personal growth, was just understanding, kind of like being afraid of getting a diagnosis wrong, was getting afraid of failing a test. And I don't know, I think I got over that just by learning how to cope, and I learned a lot about myself, and
It's neat, and there are all kinds of types of education you could go into that would offer this, but medicine also offers, for me, simultaneously the ability to raise my esteem and be incredibly humiliated. Or humble is another way to say it, but it's a very humbling field, but it's also a wonderful thing because while you're humbled, you're also reminded, or at least for me, that I joined this field because I would like to be more focused on other people's health rather than, it's not necessarily everything centered around me except that I like to problem solve. And it's nice to forget yourself a little bit, at least for me, I like to forget myself a little bit in my work and sort of put energy out for other people, and it's good for that. And it will also remind you when you think that you're top stuff, something will happen. That you'll be reminded that you're not always the best.
And we probably have
It's
time
fun.
for one or two more questions
Yeah, and then we
before
gotta
we
run
head
to
back for
another
a
one.
meeting. Anybody have any pressing questions?
You've got a good one in the back. The science is over, or whatever you're doing back there. What do you got? Nothing.
It sounds like, Chandler, you went from test anxiety to looking at everything that's difficult, kind of like a challenge.
Yeah. And I think part of that is I got more confident in myself. I started, because I've always done well in school, but it's always that daunting fear of the unknown. And I've started getting to the point where, and that's what is also gonna help me in the clinic, is understanding, like, I know what I know, and I have to just trust my instincts and my training at that point. Because just have to have confidence in yourself at that point, and I think that's helped me a lot in my, I don't know, I'm a very different test taker than I was 4 years ago in college.
Questions in Ohio?
So you want to be a psychologist and you want to be pediatric?
I want to be an obstetrician gynecologist.
And I want to head into oncology, either pediatric or pediatric neuro-oncology or regular oncology or internal medicine, you know, but some route to get to
He's
oncology
our
and
jack
then
of all
research there.
trades.
Do you know Dr. Jill at Sanford?
Do you
Dr.
know,
Jill?
Weimer, Dr. Jill Weimer?
how about Mark Mango?
Mango.
I know, the only reason I know the Mingo name is a friend here said, oh, there's a Mingo down there.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I don't.
I
Yeah.
think he's a second year.
No, he's
He's,
out in the field.
yeah, he's ahead of us.
Okay.
'Cause he's
Yeah.
somebody that we're with in Yankton. He was a classmate, who's Corey, who
Okay.
is, I think he would be a fourth year or in residency now. So he's a little bit ahead of us.
So are you guys gonna come back and practice rural medicine, or are you gonna go away?
I'm gonna stay Midwest. I don't know, I'll probably end up in a area probably just slightly smaller than Sioux City. But I definitely wanna stay Midwest.
I have 3 kids. We live in Yankton. If it were up to me, I would figure out a way to just stay there. But it's pretty likely I'm gonna end up heading towards the city for training, and then I'd like to end up, ideally, I'd like to end up either back in Yankton or in Sioux Falls. There's a nice research facility up on the north side of Sioux Falls that is probably the one that I would choose to be associated with.
Dr. Jill works at Sanford Research.
Yeah.
They had a big hand in putting our program together. These kids have PCR experience because of
Because of Dr.
Sanford
Jill,
Research and Dr. Jill.
DNA or RNA?
Our DNA.
PCR.
Yeah, what's
Better that way.
It's-
You won't,
Those gels you guys made where you tracked your DNA.
you won't
Look
hate
at
it
the
near as
black
much
light.
if it's
Ready to
DNA.
go in the
Oh,
closet
yeah.
with the black light to see them?
You determined whether or not that individual had disease of some sort. I don't know what the disease was.
I honestly don't
When was
remember that.
that? When did we do that?
You guys would have done it
Seventh
when
grade
you
or
were
eighth
8th
grade?
graders or 7th grade.
7th grade. Because we went to
And possibly again before the year's over.
Yeah.
We've got to run, but if I would just say, the only last thing I would sort of remind you is, if you're interested in it, just go for it. And let that which, my favorite band is from UK called Radiohead, and years ago there was a guy, Tom York, who's the lead singer, but there's a quote that I always like that he talks about how to deal with people, and he said you just follow the warmth. So, if you have something that's calling you towards something like that, just get into it, get your feet wet, and then follow that which feels right, and it will be.
We have a
Might
question
be
from
something else.
Ohio, if you can put up with just one more. Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, thank you very much for, all right, let me just start with you. It was fascinating hearing the both of you talk. You want to be where you are, but market forces are driving you towards larger areas of population. Do you see a rise in telemedicine in the next coming years and the decades?
Oh, yeah.
And what is your schooling doing to prepare you for that?
That's a great
In fact,
question.
the reality that you can't stay in Yankton, you're going to have to move to larger population centers.
Well, one thing is they've made us aware of telemedicine. We've toured the Avera e-care facility up in Sioux Falls, and we know the extent to which they offer services to the Midwest, more or less, and have participated in a mock assisted, I guess it was an ER visit. I don't think that anybody that we've been exposed to thus far would claim to have a handle on where e-medicine is going. And so they've made us aware to a certain extent of the what appears to be an explosion of new tools on the horizon for diagnostics from a distance. But besides being aware of where it is today, I don't have a very developed perspective on that. And I'm becoming ever more convinced that the type of research that I would like to do can be accomplished from Yankton. It's just, I'm actually sort of overwhelmed by the amount of information that is made available to us by the internet and by just personal connection, even through meeting once. An awful lot can be accomplished. So I don't feel an overwhelming pressure to move towards a higher center, save for the experience. I feel like in training, I'm probably going to want to be somewhere, for clinical trials, you sort of need to be at one of the hubs in this country if you really want to see a low prevalence disease, to get a chance to see it, you're going to need to be localized for a little while. But I think after that, with the right context, I have every hope and expectation to be back in a lower population area.
Thank you. That was a very interesting answer to me. I appreciate you taking the time.
don't trust really anyone.
That's your problem.
Yes, yes it is. Yes it
We need
is.
to get going.
Yes, thank you so much for your time.
Daniel, when you said my,
Good luck. If I may, oh, great.
Your pens?
he's a doctor.
There.
He's
Blue ones?
I don't know. You don't know where Mitchell is? I know where
Thank you very much.
And if they have any questions, they can use my email.
Sure.
Yeah, so we have send away.
Thank you very much for having us.
Good luck. Take care, guys.
Good luck, guys.
Mr. Schneider, how old is he?
Almost, well, he's gonna be 40 when he's done. Or,
So he's got
Like
31.
he's 37,
I
38.
bet he's, oh, well, when's, isn't he just second year? Third year?
How come they weren't here very long?
They were supposed to stay the whole 90-minute class period, but then an emergency type meeting came up. So they have a meeting at 11 in the hospital.
At the hospital here? Why are they here?
Because they're talking to our doctors.
Oh.
That's a part of what they're doing right now, is they're going around and they're spending time at different facilities, talking to different people, about different things.
They watched the.
You all have a sheet in your email that you need to be filling out. Yes, I know, because you were typing on your computer while they were speaking.
You were
Yeah, goodness gracious, Alex.
Don't pass that way.
Oh, never mind.
Remember stuff
It
better.
never comes across to the speaker that you are multitasking or that you are listening to them plus you're on the computer.
He was doing March Madness stuff.
I'm
What
sure
were
it
their
was.
names?
No, I was writing down what they were.
I have no idea,
Hey,
listen, listen,
Don't interrupt.
part of that document that you guys all have is to figure out what you paid attention to, not for you now to ask the questions about what you paid attention to. So do your best, but listen to Mr. Schneider here real quick.
Go ahead,
His name David,
I'm done.
was it David?
David.
Haley,
Oh, I'm sorry.
His,
You just didn't even
his email says David, he introduced himself as Dave.
okay. Ooh, see, that doesn't sound.
How does
that sound?
I just don't know their last name.
sexy. That sounds normal.
17 plate.
It's a Isabel.
What about me?
No, it was the black Ford that was parked out here. I don't know whose it belongs to.
Yeah, Ty's aunt's.
Ty's aunt's,
Not Ty's uncle's girl.
Ty's
Her-
uncle's girlfriend.
She has like Wyoming plates or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's Illinois.
Illinois plates.
These are 17.
Illinois?
Are you sure?
Yeah, these were 17.
Wyoming,
sure it's
Illinois,
Illinois?
same thing.
Every time I hear that, I think of the song, it has no good brother-in-law from Illinois
Schneider.
singing it. What's
It's
the
probably
song?
got longer.
You can just turn that down.
30-point fun.
30 points. I didn't.
What are those supposed to be?
I wouldn't even
Maybe
get
it's
that.
on your phone.
Yeah, like,
This is it down.
you need to talk, they don't need
There's
to
some-
out.
Good.
Thank you, Mrs.
I've been
Schneider.
since Valentine's Day is awful.
I wanted to do a brief recap.
Most mediocre day on the earth.
Things that I heard, themes that I heard from their conversation. And this is gonna be much better for you guys to be there.
Thank you.
Remember, he's gonna have all,
I don't know.
soft.
I saw that, every time they went somewhere different, it was a big deal. When they hit freshman year of college, they went, oh my God, this is hard. When they hit the first year of med school, they went, oh my God, this is hard. When they hit the lab, when they hit the field, they went to the clinic with the real doctors, they went, oh my God, this is hard. Most of you did that when you hit this classroom, right? Still do? When you got to me and Mary?
You know,
Right? And then the next problem we throw at you, you're gonna go, oh my God, this is hard. What did they say about that? How did they feel about that?
That's what makes
Saw
it
it as a
easier,
challenge.
it makes it learnable.
They took it as a challenge, and because they took it as a challenge, it became easier, made it learnable, and
Better for later on.
they knew that it was gonna help them to struggle through this problem right now, today. It's gonna make their brain better for what they're gonna do in the future. Did they know what problems they're gonna have in the future?
No.
Do they know what their job is even? Does David? No.
He just knows.
But he knows he's got more, I gotta know more stuff than this is what's in front of me today, so I'm gonna learn it.
I don't even know what those words meant when they said them. Yeah, they used to.
What words?
Yeah, so when he
He
said
wanted
what
to go
he
in.
wanted to go into
Oh.
oncology.
Yeah,
Oh.
the specific medical terms,
Yeah.
he wants to deal with cancer.
Oh.
Oncology is like
Cancerous.
blood.
And then when she said, I
Is
did
it
not
like-
catch anything
it's
she
one
said.
blood
She said something about gyno
Cancer research.
Gynecology. Is that
Obstetrics and
something
gynecology,
birthing.
OBGYN. She's gonna be a
Oh.
female doctor.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh.
I know what that was. I just didn't know what the words meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know what the word.
First two letters of obstetrics,
That's really
which is,
OB.
Because you
Baby
are the
doctor.
age that you are.
A baby doctor.
and gynecology, GYN,
OBGYN.
That's
which is female doctor.
A baby female doctor.
There you go.
What is OBGYN?
Oh
Gynecologist.
my god.
We just went through that,
I know, but like,
literally.
does it not just, like, does it not stand for
OB is the first two letters of
Gynecologist.
obstetrics, GYN is the first three of
Oh.
gynecology.
Heather's husband is an OBGYN.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
That's true.
Did he deliver your baby?
No, that's a really good question though. They don't do that because of ethical issues. Like what if something happens to your baby and that's your baby, you would never forgive yourself, right?
Well, you're gonna blame him anyway.
And
Like
when
his
things
mom
happen
is an
to-
OBGYN too, and so I thought when we were first married, like, oh, she'll deliver our baby, but she wouldn't do it either.
And when things happen to you, do you ever freak out?
Yeah.
Is that a good thing when your doctor freaks out?
No.
Probably not. Okay. Jim, how much time do you have? Do we need to push you to the front? Okay,
You're muted.
that's fine.
It's okay, Slim, I don't mind. I'm interested in your analysis of their conversation
Sure.
and what these kids think about that amazing opportunity that they just had.
So we talked about big steps. Big steps are a good thing
Yeah.
because it's gonna
If you
make
have
you
long
smarter.
legs.
It's gonna make you use your brain better, right? Problem solving got mentioned in there. Wasn't almost everything they talked about problem solving in one way or another? I mean, gotta learn how to take tests better. Gotta learn how to study more efficiently because these guys are experts at studying and they still spent 17 hours a day getting ready for the MCATs. Is that what they were studying for? No, it wasn't.
I think it was their first round of boards.
Yes. So, problem solving is a huge thing. Do you think that Dave had to do problem solving when he was building cabinets?
Oh, yeah. Probably.
Do you think he had to do problem solving when he was restoring cars?
Yes.
Do you think he has to do problem solving as a doctor?
Yeah.
No.
Duh. Who doesn't? Did you show up at school with clothes on?
Maybe.
You've already problem solved today. You know what's clean and what's dirty in your room, right?
No.
Or ish? You at least found something that's clean enough that you can show up in school wearing it? You problem solved.
I don't know, sometimes
Okay.
I agree, Stan.
Problem solving is big in life. The bigger the problem, the more important that is. You should probably practice that while you're a sophomore, because
I have to
the
be-
problems get bigger.
I have to be honest with you, you know, I loved everything that they talked about, but I'm most curious about what, and I didn't ask him, what changed him from being an engineer to a doctor?
I was gonna ask him, but then I
They're the same.
Well, they are really the same, that's not my point, but
And he did.
I'm curious whether or not there was a life-altering thing that made him go.
I got that from him. That specific cancer, that specific pediatric cancer that we can't pronounce and none of us remember anyway, right? The brain cancer thingy that I would bet there's somebody in his life that was important to him that got that.
Well, and I want you
I
guys
don't
all to
know that.
realize that at
But I
40,
would
you're
bet.
not dead. And at 40, that's actually really starting, you could start a second career, completely separate career.
What
Like
about
him.
ultra rare Mars? Why would you want to go away from that?
It gets boring after a while.
I don't know, cause.
And he also said that, and it's when he noticed that stupid 3D heart thing was right in the back of his head. At that same time, he noticed, or he was saying, that he wanted to help other people. That he wanted to dedicate his life to helping other people, and he said, if you have a heart for helping others, right? He used those words. Then medicine is a good way to do that. And he is obviously a pretty intelligent guy.
Too much anxiety.
He's not gonna go be, you know, an LPN in a nursing home and be the one that has to lift and tote because he's a guy and the girls can't. He's gonna go beyond that. So, he got there because he can problem solve, And because he took the big steps as a challenge, not just roll over and die and say, I can't. And they both have curiosity, which helps them with their problem solving and getting over the big steps, right? And eventually, and it was 3/4 of the way through their talk, when I brought out that term, because they were saying it without saying that term, systems thinking. Do you know what that is? Do you have a clue? Have you ever heard it?
Systematic way.
Is that like where you have
Thinking
to go, like,
systematically? That would be linear thinking, actually.
Is that like when they go like from one thought to like the second thought?
Nope, that's linear thinking. From one step to the next step to the next step. Am I not drawing a line?
Systems is like all at the same time.
Are these not
Linear,
0,
yeah.
+1, -1? Is that not a number line?
Yeah.
When you think about this thing leads to this thing leads to this thing, that's linear thinking. Systems thinking is, oh, heck, I remember this thing. We studied that when we did that thing over there.
Oh,
And we also studied that when we did that thing over there. And these two were both in that other project that we did over there. And we were talking about actually car parts, and I mentioned diagnosing an electrical problem, and your starter doesn't even click. Well, that could be the battery. It could be the wires. It could be your key, right? But it could also be something in a different system. It could be the computer. That signal's not even getting anywhere. It goes from your key to the computer to dies. Doesn't go anywhere. Okay?
Mr. Schneider,
Yeah.
may I make an observation about
Absolutely.
systems thinking? That systems thinking actually encompasses all the other three. You have to be able to make leaps between information. You have to be able to synthesize information you already have. And you have to be curious. In systems thinking, if you're not curious, you won't see the relationship between things. For example, say he diagnoses somebody who has a very odd illness, and he doesn't ask the question, have you ever been to South America in the last 6 months? And because he doesn't ask that question, the concept that they may have the Zika virus would never come about. But system thinking allows him to say, all right, I need to think about ecology, I need to think about where they've been, I need to think about their overall health, and I need to think about what I know about medicine. And it is inherently transdisciplinary to think in a systematic way, because you need to be able to think about all the things that you have to do. Has anybody in this class ever programmed a robot?
Hey, I did that when I went to
You know what
Wagner.
systems thinking is, because robots are dumber than a bag of wet hair on the bottom of the ocean. You need to tell them every single thing that they will encounter and what they do when they encounter it. That is systems thinking, and it's not linear. It will never be linear. The moment it's linear, it is just information. But systems thinking is going up and down in a chain of related information, and it is a critical world skill, no matter what you do. Do not underestimate the power of systems thinking. You can make horrid mistakes by not thinking systematically. And that's what I have to say on that. It's very important.
Awesome.
Never mind.
And Heather, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask the students if they thought we did much systems thinking in this class.
Oh, yeah, we do.
The answer's
They
probably
make
yes.
us do it every day.
Yes. And that's the part that makes your head explode.
Yeah.
And I believe it was Chandler, shortly after she talked about the surgery, she got to sit down and she stood over here and said, I had to stand like this. That said, when she goes out into the clinic, she has to understand that, okay, I know what I know, and I don't know anything else. And this problem requires something that she doesn't know. So she's gonna have to go figure it out. That was a big deal for me. Because that, like Jim just said, the curiosity, the want to solve the problem, which David said passion at one point, right? And he was actually pointing over this way. I think he might have been talking to Hunter at that time. Tell you a little bit of something about my brain, right? The curiosity drives the want to solve the problem. And the problem's gonna require systems thinking. Any problem that's worth your time is gonna require that. And possibly even what's for lunch. where do we go to get lunch in Sioux Falls? Do you have to think about traffic? Do you have to think about travel time? Do you have to think about, am I gonna have to stand in line for 25 minutes when I get there?
What do I even wanna eat?
Am I gonna be able to walk out with my food in 3 minutes? Is there a drive up? Do I wanna sit down? Do we have time for that? What are we doing next? When do I have to be back there?
How does my stomach feel? I was like greasy.
Lunch is systems thinking, right?
Basketball.
Yeah. Somebody throws you the ball on the court with the clock running. It's systems thinking. You gotta know where the other 9 people are. And it also helps if you know where the 2 referees are, can they see me if I do this? And that's the step most people don't take. So, I thought that conversation was awesome. And I thought that conversation was all about transdisciplinary problem-based learning.
I really liked how they said that failure was not an option, it's
It's
a
gonna happen.
requirement.
Yeah.
You have to, at some point, fail at something. And you pick yourself up and you go through the wall and you redo it.
Pick yourself up, you grab yourself.
You can't be perfect. Nothing that you create can ever be perfect.
No. I made waffles this weekend with ham and cheese in the middle of them. Sounds good, doesn't it?
No.
Not so much.
Not so much.
No.
Do you actually
Imagine
do that?
waffles that are salty.
Sounds
You
good.
do, they're really salty
You
waffles.
got the wrong hand then.
That's just nasty.
That's
You know, we
not
got the
right.
ham we got.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I want you to take what we just talked about for the last hour and apply it to what you're doing for class.
And what
What are we
Jim is
doing?
gonna talk about.
You guys, hang on,
Are we gonna modify?
you guys are supposed to be creating an infographic.
Yes.
You guys are supposed to be about done.
Oh, yeah. I actually, I
Hang
got a
on.
lot done.
Hang on, time out. Have you met Jim?
Yeah.
Jim is an expert at infographics.
Show me your ways.
Jim practically has a degree in infographics, and if he doesn't have one, he could get one.
There's
Real
such a thing in
easily.
that.
So we're gonna let Jim talk about infographics for a while.
Do we put him on the big screen?
Yes.
You want Jim on the big screen?
Yeah.
I kinda wanted to ask Dave what was wrong
I
with
can
him.
arrange that. Okay?
He's so gray for a
I
38.
so trusted him. He spoke up there and I'm like, I like you. You could tell me a guy.
Yeah.
I
He
feel
had
good
a
with that.
nice voice,
He
a
did, he
nice.
had that nice
He had a nice,
soothing-
what do you call it?
Yes.
Like vibe.
One more
Had a
thing I
nice-
wanted to remember to
He's
mention.
gonna be a good doctor.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm going to him.
Okay. Me too.
I'm not going
I
to
mean-
that.
Guys,
They're gonna die.
did his word choice
I
change?
hope when my husband gets
Did
home,
his vocabulary change when he started
Just
talking to
saying.
Jim?
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Yeah. He's big words.
This is a pocket. This is a pocket. This is a pocket.
You have to be able to flip that switch. You have to be
Yeah, I don't know what he
able.
meant by telemedicine.
You
Sophomore,
gotta get it.
What? They're just chatting.
no, they're not.
I know, Cindy.
You have to be able to flip that switch and go from talking to the 4th graders to explaining something to a professor. You absolutely must be able to do that. If you understand things,
That's an interesting segue for me because that concept right there, flipping the switch of who you're talking to, is mission critical in infographics. The component that's most important about infographics, everybody thinks it's the way it looks. It's not the way it looks. You can do an infographic with a chart. What's important is understanding the core concept and what the concept you want people to take away without having to discuss is. An infographic should tell you something without having to use words. That's really important. So if I give you a chart with a whole bunch of labels, that's not an infographic. What is that?
A chart with a bunch of labels.
It's a chart with a bunch of labels. The power of an infographic is that it tells a story with a metaphor. And the place to go to learn everything you will ever need to know about infographics, believe it or not, there's 2. The first is CNN. The second is USA Today. Why do you think those 2 are great places to learn about infographics?
Because they use them. They use that.
That's true, but why do they need them?
To catch your.
Because they're the news.
They are the news, this is true. However, they are also the single largest source of news for the illiterate and non-English speaking population in the US. CNN is popular because of video. I can listen and hear what they're saying. I don't have to read it. If I'm Hispanic and I don't understand what they're saying, or I'm a Chinese immigrant and I don't understand the English, I know they're going to have good images that make sense to me. So think about when you're presenting information like you don't speak English. That's the place you start. If you don't speak English, how are you going to tell the story of the information that you're getting together? That's the game changer right there. The second thing is, it has to be a metaphor. What's a metaphor? I want a student to tell me what a metaphor is.
It's comparing something, but like, I don't know, comparing.
At its essence, that's what it is. It is, something is like this. A metaphor is like this. A simile is, this is the same as. The power of a metaphor is that, very much like the Bible, it's open to interpretation. So you don't want a simile, because a simile is telling the same story over and over and over again. A metaphor is systems thinking. It's saying this is related to this, and the relationship is this, and that it's this is the infographic. So for example, I'm going to give away an infographic here. Someone give me a problem they're working on that they need to make an infographic for.
You guys are building an infographic right now. What is it for?
The evolution of an animal in 10 million years.
Okay, what are the 3 parts of that story that you need to tell a non-English speaking person?
Probably
3.
10 million years.
1, 2, 3.
What it was originally, what changed, and how it looks.
Nothing about evolution or 10 million years?
Yes.
Well, we
Oh, well, yeah or no?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are our 3 important things. We're talking about one animal over 10 million years. How would you tell that story without using words?
A timeline maybe?
Again,
A timeline at the bottom?
Yeah, but you still have to use words to explain.
I need you to be confident on this. You know what the answer is.
Pictures.
If you're going from one place to another and there's a chasm between, what would you use to cross that?
Bridge.
Start with the bridge. Evolution is a bridge. One part of the bridge is year 0. The other part of the bridge is 10 million. What's crossing the bridge?
The change.
The animal.
The animal.
The animal. Put the animal on the bridge. What's happening on that bridge?
Changing.
How would you tell someone that doesn't speak English about change in an image?
Like a morphology, it showing it as it changes visually.
There's your infographic. You're telling me you can't find pictures, at least 4 pictures, of an animal that's at least 10 million years old, of which there are millions, going across a bridge and represent that as an amount of time. Now, we've got the baseline image for your infographic. Now what you need to do is you need to make it interesting. What kind of bridge? What kind of bridge would you use?
Did you know there's like 6 different kinds of bridges?
He's talking, but we can't hear him.
I'm wanting one of you to tell me what kind of bridge would be easiest to draw and most representative. It would be a backbone, a skeleton going across the chasm. It says life. It's a bridge, right? It relates life. Now, I've taken away one element in my infographic I don't have to represent anymore. The bridge. I'm showing a spine going across a chasm of 10 million years. Crossing the spine is an animal. What animal are you researching in the evolution?
A penguin.
Peacock.
Okay?
A dog.
Yeah. So what did a penguin look like 10 million years ago?
No, we're doing it 10 million years into the future.
I know, but you need to see the evolution from 10 million years ago.
No.
Is 10 million years, is year 0 now?
Yes.
Yeah.
0 is now.
This is rich. All right. So, we're moving a penguin from where it lives now in the most unpopulated area of our planet to a potentially different continent. Because in 10 million years, how much will the world have changed?
A lot.
No, not at all. Nothing. Nothing's going to change in 10 million years. That's a blip in time.
Yeah, but we have to have a.
Is that an important concept to represent?
Well, that depends on how the humans affect it, because if we
Now you're into a very complicated story. And the power of an infographic is it's KISS, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Systems thinking, see, you've already gone there. You're going global warming, political. You're going into policy. You're going into energy. You're going into the impact of humanity. If you don't speak English, that's a lot of concepts to represent with an image. Am I right?
yeah.
Keep it simple. It'll make your life easier. So let's focus on those three things. We're moving 0 to 10 million years into the future with one animal, a penguin. What's the story you want to tell in 10 million years? What do you think that penguin will look like?
It's gonna fly
Why?
because it's moving to Texas where there's flying cars, and it doesn't need to swim anymore in Texas, so it loses its fat and it's learning to fly.
So, all right, I'm gonna accept all that as true. It's no longer a penguin. What is it?
A
What's
new
the metaphor for what it
species.
becomes? That's your story, people. Right there. You've got your bridge. I've set it up for you. Figure out how to represent that spine going across 10 million years. You know what the penguin is. What's the end game? If you can't do that, you suck at the internet. This is not hard, but you need to know what the core of the story is, and that the person reading this cannot be dependent on words. Otherwise, they just read the abstract. You must pretend that they are either in 4th grade, don't speak English, or have 13 seconds in which to look at your idea and glean an important concept. That's the power of an infographic. No more, no less. Does that make sense?
So there should be like no words on our graph.
No words whatsoever.
I have so much.
Mine's all
Mine's all.
words.
Oh, time out. Time out.
Don't freak. Don't panic. Don't
It's too
panic.
late
All
for
the words
that.
I did was on all the typing I did.
So,
Now,
Jim,
yes, sir.
in their instructions, they were told, create an infograph that identifies an animal today and the future animal. You must include for each animal. And then they were given a list. Factors that led to the changes in the animal that occurred over time, the name of the new animal, taxonomic levels, all of those kind of things. And they're struggling now that they can't have words on their infographic.
Oh, whatever. You can't have words. I mean, dry your tears, people. You can't have words on the infographic. It doesn't mean you can't have words around the infographic. When you talk about an infographic, it is an image. And there is anecdotal information around the infographic, but the infographic itself is an image. You don't put words on the image.
So
I don't put your body on the clothes. I put your clothes in the body.
Are you all understanding that distinction?
Basically,
okay.
the beauty of a blouse isn't the hanger. The beauty of a blouse is the body that the blouse hangs on, right? That's the power of fashion, how it looks on the body. It isn't how it's sewn. An infographic is about telling a story without words. Then you add words around it. So does CNN. So does USA Today. But they're not in the infographic. The power of the infographic is instant recognition. Oh, I see what they're saying. Then you back that up with data. So don't confuse the information you have to convey with the infographic. They are not the same thing. The infographic is the picture. The compelling data is around the infographic.
And we
Don't
started
try to
this
do it all at once.
we started this whole thing by defining the term infographic. And you guys told me that the graphic part meant
Picture.
a picture. And the
Picture
info
that
part means
shows,
information.
picture that shows information.
But the power of an infographic is that it does so without having to read.
Right.
I think you should show us one of these
Cool. Do you have some examples you could show us, Jim?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me see.
He's gonna blow your mind.
I should have thought about this.
I've seen some of the stuff that Jim creates, and it's good stuff. You might even find something that says SDIL or password.
Can I share my my screen?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, you can't do that. I'm sorry, Jim.
Okay. What do you think this infographic's about?
In a box.
Aquaponics.
Hold on, I can't
can't
find
read what
my
it says,
tools.
so I don't
Here they are.
Now in phonics.
It's
Now
bone
in
box.
phonics.
Nope.
I'm gonna, while you're bringing that up, Jim, I'm gonna remind them of something they did earlier this year. Do you remember all those pictures I had you identify what those pictures meant, what the metaphor for each of those pictures were?
I'm assuming I made it.
What, sure, he did make it, but that's the same thing that he's getting at here. You guys needed to identify what each of those pictures stood for. Those are all pictures that stand for something else. That's the metaphor he's referring to with the picture.
Okay, so
Water,
this one
plant,
uses
fish.
words, but it's okay. The core concepts are still there. What do you think aquaponics is?
Oh, those are A's.
Again? One person.
Water, plant, fish.
Where are the fish?
In
the
water.
And the water.
In the box.
In a box.
Where are the plants?
In a
the
circle.
water.
Iconic.
Above the fish. What do the Q and the in a box have in common?
Water.
That's right.
Whoa!
That's an infographic.
That's
Plain and simple.
awesome.
If you spoke Chinese and you could not read aquaponics in a box, but you gleaned that it was about raising fish in an enclosed environment, that was enough to tell you all three of those concepts.
With a plant.
I'm raising food in a built engineered environment using fish in a box.
That's cool.
I want to get
It's
it.
an infographic. I happen to be artistic and it's easy for me, but I could have stole all those images off the internet and just put them together in that story. But you have to know what the main three, on always three, and there's a good reason it's three, pieces of that story are. Anybody want to guess why 3 is the magic number?
Before, middle, after.
Because that's how many wishes you get.
That was beautiful. Whoever said that. Before, during, and after. Every piece of important human information has 3 components. If you have a man and a woman and you expect to propagate a species, what must you have?
A start, a middle, and an end.
A child. Right? If you have a day, you have to have a morning, an afternoon, and a night. Do you have a day without a night?
No.
It's natural human, the way humans think. They think in 3s. If you go more than 3, it becomes difficult to maneuver. If you go more than 5, you're done. Nobody can remember more than 5 things graphically. 3 is optimal. 3 is enough to tell a decent story. How many points did I point out in that aquaponics in a box model?
3.
3. 3 is a really good place to start, especially if you're a novice, which I am assuming you are. But you all know how to grab an image, right? From the internet?
Yeah.
You all have access to like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or some sort of graphics program, yes?
Yeah.
Paint.
You all know how to cite your sources, right? Because we don't steal other people's art and don't say where we got it from.
That's called plagiarism.
Because I hate you people
Yeah.
as an artist.
Some of these people are experts at plagiarism.
But it's not wrong to steal if you say where you stole it from. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite artists, Picasso, his famous quote was, "Good artists borrow, great artists steal." You have to steal in order to use a metaphor, but be classy and cite your source. Right? So if you're using a picture that somebody developed, you should cite that somewhere down in the graphic underneath. Alright? So now you have an idea of how to tell a story using information and pictures. What's your question?
Guys?
Questions?
Did somebody have a question?
No, they're just rude and they start talking about other stuff.
I still don't get what he means by the words can be on the outside of the infographic.
Like the word, like you use word art to describe something.
Right.
You shape what you're trying to explain around the words.
Have you ever
Or you shape the words around what you're trying to
So we
explain.
do 10 million years.
Jim, what's the,
change in time in one little picture.
what's the rules on captions within an infographic? Can they do that, or do they need to avoid that?
Yeah, you can totally do captions on an infographic. That's perfectly fine. And somebody just asked me, how would you show 10 million years, right? Well, the one thing that I know about most people that speak other languages is that they know how to use numbers. So the 10 million years part, that's nothing. You put 10 and then follow it by, how many zeros does that have? 6? You could do it a significant number, you could do a scientific notation for that, 10 to the 6, or you could do 10 million. You know how to do that. So show 10 million years. How would you represent the future?
What?
How would you represent the future?
On the timeline.
Well, kind of visual timeline.
That's a great one.
Start.
That's why I chose the skeleton. It's an automatic timeline. I could assign a number of years to each of the vertebrae. And I would go to 10 million.
Or the humans.
And I would show the animal at the start of the bridge. I would show the animal crossing the bridge. And I would show the animal at the end of the bridge. 1, 2, 3. Now you know that I'm talking about something that's evolved over 10 million years. And I represented the idea of evolution graphically.
And if you had a nuclear explosion that was a catalyst for your change,
I would put that right in the middle.
can you not put a mushroom cloud?
What if your animal makes multiple changes over?
No one's answered
So-
that question yet.
What if your animal makes multiple changes?
Ooh,
Didn't I
good
talk to
question.
almost every single one of you about changes don't happen for no reason? There has to be a reason, a catalyst that
Yeah.
causes it.
Then there
So,
could be multiple.
Now, understand that the thing going over the bridge, it isn't what's the word that I want? It isn't one event. You can represent multiple changes happening across that bridge. What you need to understand is the area above that bridge is sacred. That's the area where you talk about the action happening in the infographic, the change over time. That's the vector of the story. So if something happened, if multiple things happened, Antarctica became warm and the penguin had to lose weight, it had to be able to fly, I would show that warming process in a bubble on that bridge. If a nuclear incident happened and the radiation mutated that animal, I would show that happening in a bubble across the bridge. But I would represent it closer to where the evolution actually happened. It's that simple. There's nothing more complicated to this than that.
I don't think you can
You can't see
see
that.
that.
You can't.
I can see it. Event.
Oh.
Event. I see the time.
So is that what you were thinking?
Absolutely.
So, young people, when you all went out and you did research on what an infographic looked like, how many of you understood the fact that it's picture-based, but using the words was easier to use in the end?
Now I understand.
Drawing those pictures in your head is that creative side of your brain that you all really struggle with because it's a leap, right? It's a chance to be wrong in some instances, right?
Everyone thinks that making infographics is really hard. It's not. It really isn't. It's the problem. The hard part is finding the elegant metaphor. That's the hard part. It's finding that metaphor that's going to tell the story that you want. That takes synthesis. That takes understanding your problem and being able to represent that problem in a very concise way. And that's what you're crying about. You're not crying about the infographic. You're crying about synthesizing information into a discrete metaphor that tells a story without words. That's the hard part. It's not the infographic itself. It's understanding what the story is in a concise way. Right?
Awesome. Yeah. That's why I love you.
That's what's hard. And that's never going to change. But what it tells me when I see it as a professional is that you understand the problem. And it's a very powerful tool for getting people to understand what you're trying to say without having to waste a lot of time reading. So the metaphor needs to be powerful, it needs to be concise, and it needs to be interesting. What would it look like if I took a bunch of concrete blocks and stacked them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, and I had 10 blocks, each block is 1,000,000 years, and I put a penguin on one side and some bird that flies in the sky over Texas on the other. How interesting is that? Versus 2 cliffs, a skeleton going across, the penguin on one side, multiple events floating over the skeleton, 10,000,000 years on the right side, and the new bird. Doesn't that just sound more interesting? That's the power of an infographic. It's visually interesting. You can do boring infographics. Trust me, they're done all the time.
Now, how much thinking did he do about himself, the amount of work it would require?
It's an iceberg. The amount of work that's required, everybody knows the power of or the secret of an iceberg. The iceberg's only 20% above the water and 80% beneath the water. 80% of a good infographic is going in and understanding your data and your information and your story, picking that metaphor, figuring out that idea, and then 20% is actually putting it together. But it's understanding the systems engineering that goes into making a good story as an infographic. You have to know your information.
And that's where I wanted him to go. You have to know what you're talking about, or you can't even start this project.
Jim, the kids, while they have been doing their brainstorming, their thinking, they've been playing with this slinky. I can so see this being used as a metaphor for that evolutionary change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who can't find a picture of a slinky? Who can't stretch it over 2 cliffs or even 2 squares with a sky in the background and then just put your bird on one side and 10,000,000 years on the other side? Is that's the story you're telling. You're telling the story of change over time and why.
And if your bird changed because the environment changed and needed to eat a different food source, can't you turn that backbone into a big long curved beak?
I know what
Absolutely.
I'm gonna do.
Wow. The animal and stuff on there.
If it's all about basketball and how basketball changed over time, could you not use the curve of the top half of a basketball and then put your events along the top? And
No, I would show the basketball being thrown, the arc of the basketball going to the basket, and then what changed at the basket.
see, there you go.
I don't want to
Jim, you probably didn't hear the girl up front, but she says, how does he think about that so fast?
One, I'm a smart ass.
Yes.
Clever and witty. And 3, I've been doing this a long time. I know how to listen to information, quickly synthesize it, and then put something back.
And that's
That's
years
my
of
job.
years of practice at system thinking. You can't be even a good smartass if you're not good at systems thinking.
You are
I
the,
apologize if that word offended anybody.
Oh,
No, it did not.
Not
It
this
was
group.
funny.
Okay. But a good infographic takes wit. It takes a little bit of wit. You can't make a boring infographic, otherwise no one's going to look at it. And you're overwhelmed by where to start. You start by understanding your data. When you understand your data, it becomes rather obvious what you would use.
We have 3 minutes left. What do you need so that you can get your project done?
I'm a draw it at home.
No, you don't.
Is there any other thing you want to talk to Jim about?
Can he do my
We need these speakers notes submitted, or what do you want us to do with speaker notes?
Yeah, well,
I will do your infographic for you.
Okay.
I will send you.
$480 an infographic.
Oh.
There you go.
You said.
$180 a piece.
Does he get paid to do that?
That's his job, yes.
You can actually do that.
$480.
Did you not see the design cycle that I put up?
He gets paid to do, yeah.
He did that. Mr. Schneider gave you an assignment early in the year about how our hybrid class works. He did that.
Why?
Oh yeah, that was you working with me. That was an infographic on the complicated processes of the hybrid program, and I was able to shrink that down to 3 things because of what you gave me back. I understood the problem, and now it made sense to me.
How long did it take you to do that?
Well, because I use Illustrator and I have a very specific skill set, It's about 5, maybe 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Here's, you guys do not think that everything you've done so far is just for naught. All of that information that you have is just your brainstorming. It's just to the point where you're now ready to design, which is what we've been trying to get you guys to understand this whole time. Everything you've collected so far is information leading you to understand your topic. Now you can go out and design your infographic.
Your brainstorm and your research are about done, but what you'll find is that when you brainstorm and research properly, it leads you to want to do more research.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
Nothing is designed in a vacuum, ever, ever. So if you want, put your infographics together, and if you have time, you're welcome to share them with me. I can give you critical feedback on them, on where you're going wrong. I don't mind at all. I'll totally do that. But I won't do it for you. You need to synthesize the information.
How much did he say it would cost us?
$180 a piece.
Now, that was a total fabrication. I won't do your work. That's ethically wrong.
And he's more honest than I am.
Great.
I'll gladly take your money, but I
Can
won't
you
give you
come
an
visit
infographic.
us? So what do you want us to do with these speakers?
Yeah, tell him to come with Mrs.
So the speaker notes, Mary. What do we do with the speaker notes?
Do your speaker notes, put them in your Google Drive, please.
Okay.
And don't do them together, they're for you. And if I think you've done them together, then you're all gonna do the paper that goes along with it.
Oh!
No one do it together.
Guys,
Yeah, please do.
I got your lines on my phone.
Hang on.
just a minute, Jane.
Guys, the bell might ring in the middle of this. He's gonna show us some infographics that he's created.
Oh yay, I like it.
If I can find it.
They're like fun riddles to solve.
They are.
I can guarantee you they'll be awesome, because he doesn't let people see stuff that isn't.
It's fine, it's fine.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Where were you? Zoom.
Top edge.
Share the screen. This is an infographic I did for a friend of mine
Oh my gosh.
to understand the periodic table of elements. I'm Dr. Mr. Schneider, and I wanted people to realize that it is basically a cone, with hydrogen at its top, and the rest of the elements periodically spanning out from that. It's a new way of thinking about elements that isn't linear.
I love that.
I understand
That is really cool.
Cool.
How long did that take you?
These over here are the radioactive elements along the outside, and these are the lanthanide and the actinide series that float underneath, which you can kind of see right here.
How long did that take?
That's an infographic about how the periodic table of elements work together in three dimensions.
How long did that take you to do?
It took me a couple of nights of dreaming and probably a day.
Wow, very cool.
You're too creative.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Heather.
Oh, shoot. If we could put that whole thing on, that's all we have to do. We did our table.
Good, David.
System.
Clank, clank, clank.
That was awesome.
Who's doing that?
Yeah, that was a great talk. I enjoyed the medical students as well. I think that was really good for the kids to hear.
I'd like to have had them for an hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would have been great.
I mean, such a good demonstration of how they use hybrid and transdisciplinary
Yes.
after high school. This is something we're doing.